Imagine a Middle-earth where Frodo Baggins, the unassuming hobbit of the Shire, succumbs to the One Ring's seductive power. At the cracks of doom, instead of destroying the ring, he claims it for himself. The moment of triumph becomes a moment of despair, as Sauron, ever watchful, reclaims his ultimate weapon. The ramifications of this failure would ripple through every corner of Arda, unraveling the fragile alliances and sacrifices made throughout the War of the Ring. The ring's destruction was not merely the undoing of Sauron's physical might, but also the collapse of his metaphysical will, which dominated and enslaved all he touched. If Frodo failed, Sauron's power would become absolute. With the ring in his grasp, he would no longer be a shadowy spectre tied to Barad-dûr, but a fully manifest Dark Lord with an iron grip over Middle-earth. His armies, bolstered by his renewed strength, would overwhelm Gondor, Rohan, and every free people. Even the valiant Stan at Minas Tirith or the Defiance at Helm's Deep would pale before the might of an empowered Sauron. A world under Sauron would mean more than physical conquest. It would represent the corruption of all that is good. The elves, who already felt the weariness of Middle-earth, would fade faster, their connection to the beauty of Arda severed. The dwarves, staunch allies of men and elves, would retreat into their mountains, perhaps to be enslaved, as they were in ages past. And what of the hobbits? The idyllic Shire, untouched for so long, would become a desolate waste. The simple folk would likely be enslaved or exterminated as insignificant obstacles to Sauron's dominion. The moral and philosophical implications are staggering. Middle-earth is deeply tied to themes of hope, resilience, and the struggle against inevitable decay. Frodo's failure would crush these themes underfoot. The tale would become a tragedy not of heroism, but of hubris, a warning about the seductive nature of power. Gandalf's dire warnings about the ring's corrupting influence would manifest in Frodo himself, underscoring the inescapable vulnerability of even the purest hearts. Yet, it's not just Frodo's failure that must be considered. The Fellowship as a whole, their trials, sacrifices, and choices would be rendered futile. Sam, the unyielding embodiment of loyalty, would be left broken, either witnessing Frodo's corruption or dying in the ensuing chaos. Aragorn, who bore the burden of ancient kingship, would see his lineage end in defeat, unable to reclaim the throne of Gondor. And what of Gollum? His pivotal role in the original story suggests that in this alternate ending, he too might fall victim to the ring, either destroyed by it or enslaved to Sauron once again. The question, then, is whether any hope could survive. Would there be any remaining will to resist? The next segment will delve deeper into the consequences for Middle-earth's free peoples, and whether resistance, even in the smallest corners, could endure in the shadow of Sauron's dominion. If Frodo failed, the free peoples of Middle-earth would face annihilation or enslavement. Let us first consider Gondor, the last bastion of strength among men. In Tolkien's legendarium, Gondor symbolizes resilience against the darkness. Yet even Gondor, mighty as it was, could not withstand a fully empowered Sauron. The siege of Minas Tirith, already a near hopeless defense, would become a rout. With the One Ring restored to Sauron, the Witch King and the other Nazgûl would become unstoppable, emboldened by their master's renewed strength. Once Gondor fell, the rest of Middle-earth would follow like dominoes. Rohan, valiant and unyielding, would be overrun by Sauron's vast armies of orcs, trolls, and corrupted men. The Riders of the Mark, who value freedom and the open plains, would face a grim choice: servitude under Sauron or annihilation. The notion of a free Rohan galloping to the aid of allies would become a distant memory, buried beneath the shadow. The elves, already in decline, would fare little better. Rivendell, the refuge of wisdom and counsel, would fall to Sauron's wrath. Lothlorien, safeguarded by Galadriel's ring of power, would become a target, as her ring would now bend to Sauron's will. The golden woods would wither and die, their timeless beauty defiled. Even Valinor, the undying lands across the sea, would not be untouched. Though Sauron could not conquer the Blessed Realm, his corruption of Middle-earth would sever the connection between the lands of the living and the lands of the divine. Dwarves, often overlooked in discussions of the War of the Ring, would not escape unscathed. Their mountain fortresses, like Erebor and the Iron Hills, would become strongholds of resistance. However, their greed and pride, long exploited by Sauron in previous ages, might lead to their eventual downfall. The dwarves' isolationist tendencies would leave them vulnerable, unable to muster the alliances needed to oppose Sauron's might. The hobbits, of course, would suffer a fate most tragic. The Shire, already scoured in Tolkien's original tale, would face complete obliteration. In a world dominated by Sauron, the idyllic simplicity of hobbit life could not endure. The Shire's fertile lands would be stripped bare to fuel the fires of Mordor, its people enslaved to till fields or work in factories producing weapons for Sauron's armies. Frodo's own kin, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, would either fall in resistance or be captured and twisted into symbols of Sauron's dominion. One might ask if resistance could arise from the ashes of defeat. Would there be an Aragorn-like figure to inspire rebellion? The answer lies in the nature of Sauron's power. With the ring, Sauron controls not just armies, but the very wills of those who oppose him. Any resistance would likely be fragmented and short-lived, as Sauron's dominion extends over the minds and hearts of Middle-earth's inhabitants. Even the thought of rebellion might be snuffed out before it could take root. In the next segment, we will explore whether Eru Ilúvatar, the creator of Middle-earth, or the Valar, the guardians of the world, might intervene, or if Middle-earth's fate would be sealed in eternal darkness. Middle-earth's history is shaped by the hands of mortals, yet divine forces have often intervened in moments of great peril. If Frodo failed, would Eru Ilúvatar, the supreme creator, intervene to avert catastrophe? Or would the Valar, the powerful beings who once shaped the world, rise from their distant realm of Valinor to confront Sauron once more? The first question to consider is Eru's stance on mortal agency. Tolkien himself described Eru as a being who rarely intervened directly, choosing instead to guide events subtly through the free will of his creations. However, there are notable exceptions. The destruction of Númenor, for instance, was a direct act of Eru, executed when the pride of men grew so great that they sought to challenge the Valar themselves. Similarly, Eru's hand is evident in the creation of the Istari, the order of wizards sent to Middle-earth to aid in the struggle against Sauron. If Sauron regained the ring, the balance of Middle-earth would shift so drastically that it might warrant Eru's intervention. Yet even this is fraught with uncertainty. Eru's philosophy often revolves around the redemptive power of suffering and struggle. Could the complete failure of Frodo and the subjugation of Middle-earth be part of a larger, incomprehensible plan? Perhaps even in darkness, Eru sees the potential for eventual light, a theme that echoes through Tolkien's legendary. The Valar, on the other hand, are a more tangible force, though their involvement in Middle-earth has waned since the First Age. During that age, they waged open war against Morgoth, Sauron's master, bringing about his downfall. However, this intervention came at great cost, scarring the land and leading to the sinking of Beleriand. Since then, the Valar have largely retreated to Valinor, leaving Middle-earth's inhabitants to chart their own course. Would they return to challenge Sauron? It is doubtful. The Valar's relationship with Middle-earth is one of diminishing influence. They sent the Astari as emissaries, not soldiers, suggesting they believed the struggle against Sauron should be waged by the peoples of Middle-earth themselves. Moreover, the Valar's reluctance to interfere in the Third Age reflects their respect for Eru's design and the autonomy of the world's inhabitants. This leaves Middle-earth in a precarious position. If divine intervention is unlikely, what hope remains? Tolkien's world is steeped in the idea of small acts of defiance holding immense power. Even under Sauron's dominion, there could be pockets of resistance, small lights that refuse to be extinguished. Perhaps Samwise Gamgee, who carried Frodo's broken spirit to Mount Doom, might find a way to kindle hope, even in a world overshadowed by despair. In the next segment, we will examine the long-term implications of Frodo's failure on the metaphysical aspects of Middle-earth, including the corruption of Arda itself and the legacy of the One Ring as an eternal symbol of domination. If Frodo failed, the consequences would reach beyond the physical world of Middle-earth and into its metaphysical fabric, known as Arda. Arda itself, as Tolkien envisioned it, is marred, corrupted by the influence of Morgoth, Sauron's former master. The One Ring, created with Sauron's will and malice, serves as an extension of that original corruption, concentrating it into a physical object. Its restoration to Sauron would amplify this marring exponentially, making Arda itself more deeply entwined with evil. This concept, rooted in Tolkien's creation mythology, suggests that the ring's reclamation would alter not just the political or cultural landscape, but the very essence of Middle-earth. The elves, already bound to the fate of Arda, would feel this corruption keenly. Their rings of power, crafted by Celebrimbor under Sauron's influence, are indirectly tied to the One Ring. With Sauron's victory, the elven rings would fall entirely under his control, extinguishing what little power they retained to preserve beauty and stave off decay. Rivendell and Lothlorien would become ghostly echoes of their former selves, unable to resist the ever-encroaching shadow. The corruption of the land would not stop with the elves. Sauron's mastery over Middle-earth would seep into the hearts of men, fostering division and betrayal. Tolkien frequently portrayed men as a race torn between great potential and great weakness. Without the counterbalance of hope and resilience symbolized by Frodo's mission, men would succumb to their basest instincts. Entire kingdoms might rise under Sauron's banner, not through conquest, but by choice, seduced by promises of power or the fear of annihilation. The dwarfs, whose resilience often shields them from direct corruption, might not escape unscathed. Their deep connection to the earth, a source of both strength and vulnerability, would make them susceptible to Sauron's influence over the land itself. Mines and fortresses might turn into places of dread, filled with the echoes of slavery and despair. Even their famed craftsmanship could be twisted, creating weapons of unparalleled destruction for Sauron's armies. And what of the hobbits, the simple folk who played such a pivotal role in the original tale? The Shire would become a grim testament to what is lost in Sauron's world. It's not just the physical destruction of their homeland that matters, but the erasure of their spirit. Hobbits represent the unassuming joys of life, friendship, feasting, and the love of home. Under Sauron, such joys would be replaced by fear and servitude, turning the Shire into a bitter symbol of what once was. Finally, the One Ring itself would endure as a symbol of domination, reshaping the mythology of Middle-earth. In the original timeline, its destruction signifies the triumph of selflessness and the end of Sauron's terror. But in this alternate vision, its survival would perpetuate the narrative of power's inevitability. The ring's presence would serve as a reminder that absolute power not only corrupts, but consumes all hope of redemption. In the next and final segment, we will consider how Frodo's failure would echo through the ages, affecting not just Middle-earth's present, but its distant future, and whether Tolkien's themes of hope and redemption could ever resurface in such a world. If Frodo failed, the consequences would echo far beyond the Third Age, shaping the fate of Middle-earth for all time. In Tolkien's Legendarium, the ages of the world are marked by cycles of rising hope and devastating fall. The First Age ended with the triumph of the Valar over Morgoth, but only after catastrophic loss. The Second Age saw Numenor's rise and ruin, and the Third Age was characterized by the lingering shadow of Sauron. Frodo's failure would shatter this pattern, replacing cycles of renewal with a permanent descent into darkness. The dominance of Sauron would bring an end to the Fourth Age before it even began. This age, meant to be the age of men and a time of relative peace, would never materialize. Instead, Middle-earth would stagnate, locked in a state of eternal tyranny. Sauron, with the ring binding all wills to his own, would become an unassailable force. Unlike Morgoth, whose evil was vast but ultimately dissipated when the Valar intervened, Sauron would endure indefinitely, as his essence was inextricably tied to the ring. In such a scenario, the legacy of Middle-earth's heroes would become tales of warning rather than inspiration. The bravery of the Fellowship, the wisdom of Gandalf, the love of Aragorn and Arwen, all would fade into obscurity, their efforts remembered only as futile attempts to resist an unstoppable evil. The very act of storytelling, so vital to the culture of Middle-earth, might be lost. Under Sauron's dominion, tales of heroism and hope would likely be suppressed, replaced by propaganda glorifying his reign. What of Eru Ilúvatar's grand design? Would the creator of Arda allow such an outcome to persist? While Uru's plans are inscrutable, it is conceivable that even in failure, he might plant the seeds of renewal. Perhaps a new figure, untainted by the Third Age's tragedies, could arise in some distant epoch to challenge Sauron. Yet, such a hope is tenuous at best. Unlike Morgoth, whose defeat required the collective might of the Valar and the children of Ilúvatar, Sauron's victory would be so comprehensive that any future resistance might be impossible. It is here that Tolkien's underlying philosophy becomes most relevant. Middle-earth's narrative is deeply intertwined with the concept of eucatastrophe, a sudden and unexpected turn toward salvation. Frodo's original success at Mount Doom is a perfect example. His failure to resist the ring is mitigated by Gollum's intervention, turning an act of malice into the key to victory. If Frodo failed, the absence of eucatastrophe would redefine the story as a pure tragedy. The balance of Tolkien's themes, where despair and hope exist in delicate tension, would be forever shattered. Ultimately, Frodo's failure would not just change the course of history, it would alter the very soul of Middle-earth. A world ruled by Sauron would become a grim mirror to our own, one where power crushes freedom, corruption silences beauty, and hope is nothing but a fleeting dream. In such a world, the fundamental message of Tolkien's work, the triumph of the small and the humble over the great and the terrible, would be lost, leaving only a cautionary tale about the cost of succumbing to darkness.